In this particular chapter and unit, we're going to be working on smallwares. We use a lot of utensils here in my classroom. You should have already completed the Ed puzzle on the basic utensils. Those are the ones that are found in your drawer, and those are the ones that we use the most often. So if they're handy, they're going to be things that we use regularly. If it's something that we only use a couple of times a year and we only use them for specific labs, then they have a home in the area that goes between the classroom and the food lab, and they have a labeled box right in there as you go into the right, which some of you have already been in that room and found some things. So the main idea here is that smallwares are what we refer to as hand tools or utensils, pots and pans, and things that are used in the culinary kitchen. It's really important to know how to properly use them and care for them. In anything that you do, using a tool properly is going to make your job more efficient and easier and better, and your overall product is going to be better. So here's some of the vocabulary that we're going to cover here in this particular unit. You guys are going to be getting yourself familiar with these terms. So when we talk about smallware, all things that are in the restaurant industry must have an NSF. The health department determines that all of the equipment that we use must be certified as being safe. So what that means is that it is non-porous, and that is why you will not see wooden handled items or wooden things within my culinary lab or professional kitchen, because wood will harbor bacteria. It is what's called porous. So porous means that it will absorb, and it will absorb bacteria. You also want to make sure things don't really have a lot of grooves or divots or holes or rivets or places in which bacteria can kind of like grow and thrive. So the smoother the handle is, the easier it is to run through a dishwasher to sanitize, the more you're going to be safe and sanitary, and it's going to be NSF certified. So when we're talking about smallwares or utensils, things that we might use, these are a couple of things that you are really going to commonly deal with. I'll show you some quick little photos of them. So as I go through the common hand tools with the identification, you guys should be filling out your guided notes. So you're going to get some guided notes on paper, and then I'm going to roll through this, and you can stop the video and fill them out as we go. So if it's highlighted in yellow on here, then that means that it is used the most in our lab. So the yellow ones are the ones you really need to pay attention to. So we're going to start with things that kind of like shred or things that pull bits of food off. So a vegetable peeler, which actually should be highlighted in yellow, so I will fix that on the presentation. That is something that is found in your drawer, and that is something that takes a thick layer of fruits and vegetables. Most people call it a potato peeler, but we use this on carrots and all kinds of food items. A channel knife, on the other hand, is a knife that has one little groove in it, and it is going to pull a big, long, lengthwise groove. And this is really good. This photo here is showing you how it's used on a lemon to pull like a nice little strip off of a lemon. A grater is something that is commonly used. Some people refer to this as a cheese grater. That is the most commonly thing that is used with the grater. We do have a couple of those, and it shreds food into small pieces. A zester, on the other hand, is something that we use here in the classroom. It is almost always used on citrus fruits. And when you take the citrus fruit and you zest a little bit off of the peel, it pulls these tiny little bits off the citrus peel. There are a lot of really intense, flavorful oils in the peeling of a citrus fruit, and they add a huge burst of flavor to your food items. So you can put lemon zest like up in a cheesecake, and it's really going to add a lot of flavor without adding the sourness of the juice, or without adding that extra liquid. So the zest of a citrus item is super great for flavoring, and we will do that in the classroom. Pizza cutter is essentially, it's just a wheel cutter. You roll it across something typically used with pastry, and it does make a cut. So it's a round cutting wheel. A fish scaler you won't ever use. That will remove the scale from fish. All of these items, here, let me move this. There we go. Okay. All of these items cut or puree food into small little bits. So a food mill, this is kind of an old school version. I actually have one of these right outside my door. If you look in the big trophy case, I have this on display. We don't use it very often. We use a food processor most often to complete that. A ricer is something that would take potatoes, like a potato ricer is really common, and it will actually like not quite puree. A tammy or a drum sieve is a super, super fine mesh and it will puree. And so, depending on what level you want to take your food, you don't always want to turn your food into baby food. Sometimes you just want to make it into little bits. So, a tammy or a drum sieve, and that word is sieve. So, a sieve is essentially made of mesh, and you put food items or you separate food items. So, a food mill, a ricer, and a drum sieve. A core or an apple core. We generally do this with a knife. I don't really like those because they don't take it all anyway, and I have to go back and kind of trim. I do have a couple, so they're kind of sharp on the edge, and you just like stick it right through the apple, and you can get a straight hole through the apple. A parasine scoop is also known as a melon baller. So if you have ever gone somewhere and they had like a watermelon basket or garnish, and you see honeydew, cantaloupe, watermelon, and they're in these fun like little balls, like almost like a little tiny ice cream scoop, then this is the tool that you actually do that from. And it generally has two ends. It has a little bitty end and it has a bigger end. So when we talk about sieves, we talk about strainers, we talk about something that will separate solids from liquids. So you have a slotted spoon in your drawer, and that'll do little bits, like if you wanted to pull green beans or corn and then leave the liquid. These items here do the same thing on a bigger scale. So a colander is underneath your sink, and a colander is essentially a bowl with holes, almost always with handles and almost always with feet. The difference between a sieve or strainer is that a strainer usually fits on a bowl, and it fits over, and it is made of mesh. So a mesh-like material versus a bowl with holes. And then the china cap or the chinois is more of a cone or conical shaped. I have a couple of those in the classroom. I do use those to kind of separate out. Typically, the china cap or the chinois, which one has bigger holes than the other. They are used on big, huge stock pots in the culinary kitchen, and I usually use smaller pots in my kitchen. I am going to pause my video here and then create a second version, so that way you don't have a video that is too